How you doing, and welcome to my channel, or welcome back to my channel, whichever it may be. Today I'm taking a look at the Hot Toys Star Wars A New Hope TIE Fighter pilot MMS 798. Quick look at the box there. You can see we have an image of the TIE Fighter pilot holding his blaster, as the 11 blaster, and then on the banner we have another image of the figure holding his alternate blaster. On the side again holding the E11. And on the back we have the usual information and details about Hot Toys. If I open up the box without too much hassle, and when I do that I would encourage you to hit the subscribe button if you haven't already. And here we have the box open. Here we have this slip card with another really nice image of the figure with a TIE fighter in the background. Really nice. So there we have it for a quick look at the box. Moving on, let's have a quick pan of the figure. So here we are for a quick pan of the TIE Fighter pilot before we get into the details. And the TIE Fighter pilots were some of the best pilots in the galaxy. And any of the pilots, not just the TIE Fighter pilots, but any Imperial pilots that defected to Rebellion quickly became some of the best pilots in the Resistance, and most of them became squad leaders. Let's take Wedge for example. He was known as TIE SS25 before he was Red 2 or Rogue 3, and not to mention Cadet 124239, who was Han Solo before he joined the Resistance. Competition was very high for the limited spots in the Imperial Galaxy. Only the best were accepted. TIE Fighter pilots were also trained as mechanics and engineers, and a lot of cadets ended up dropping out due to the difficult curriculum, and it was estimated about a 50% dropout rate. And further training to become a TIE Fighter pilot had a 90% dropout rate. Training often involved live fire exercises, so lots of cadets died in training. The TIE Fighter itself by design didn't allow for much margin of error, making the craft itself unforgiving to anybody less than elite. Because the TIE Fighter pilots were so heavily indoctrinated, they embraced the design and the flaws of the TIE Fighter and wore it as a badge of honour. So in summary, training started from childhood, training took years, and it was extremely competitive, and it rooted out all of the weakest candidates, which left the TIE Fighter pilots as some of the most talented and ruthless pilots in the galaxy. So let's move on and have a quick look at his accessories before we have a look at the figure itself. So here we are for all of the accessories that come with the New Hope TIE Fighter pilot. Not a whole heap of accessories. Starting off with the hands, we have 6 hands in total. We have relaxed palms, trigger hands. This one here could be mistaken for a trigger hand, but it's actually a pointing hand. Slightly different mold to the trigger hand. You can see the finger is straighter and the fingers are a bit more separated, but it is a pointing hand. And then we have this open palm gesturing hand. Very nice texture to them, and if that was focused, there we go. There's some texture on the inside of the glove and some, texture on the forehand of it. And then kind of a smoother looking leather looking mold on as the glove extends and goes up the arm. Then moving on, we have the back panels that go on the back of the figure, which I'll show you later on how they interchange or change out. And we have the plain one, and then we have the reminiscent to the Stormtrooper one. The detail reminds me of a Stormtrooper. And then we have these two accessories here, which are basically pouches or utility belt accessories that are optional. And then we have this blaster here, which I don't know offhand whether this is a blaster that is featured in any of the Star Wars movies. From what I hear, it's a homage to the old 70s and 80s Kenner figures. So and it kind of looks that way. It's very blocky. It doesn't look like a blaster that I've ever seen on screen. A little bit of dry brushing on on it. It's very blocky, as I said. As I was saying, yeah, a little bit of dry brushing on it. It's more useful for a TIE Fighter pilot to have a pistol than this E11. blaster. Simply, let me move these out of the way. Simply because you can use the 11 without the stock extended, but if you extend the stock, if I can get it out here, you can extend the stock here like so, and you can pull it out and, you know, form the stock like so, and it's more rifle looking. But because of the hoses, you can't actually get a realistic hold on it. You can't get it fixed to his shoulder as it should be because of the hoses there. So it's not very natural looking. It just doesn't happen because of the hoses. So if you are going to be posing with the 11, you do have to pose them with the stock folded away. You can't really pose them in a natural way with it extended out. But all the details are there for the E11. It does have the mag at the side, non-removable, no moving parts, no removable parts other than the stock. It does have the details of the scope, as you can see. And again, some more dry brushing over this weapon. A bit of weathering in all the right places, a lot of dry brushing and weathering on the grip and on the trigger assembly and on the barrel where he would be holding it. So it's got all the right details to it. It's really nice. You know, it's just a little bit unfortunate that it doesn't sit naturally with the stock extended, and not ideal for a TIE fighter pilot to be wielding this because of, as I said, the hoses that are in the way. So there we have it for all of the accessories for the TIE fighter pilot. Let's move on and have a look at the base. And here we are for the base for the TIE fighter pilot. Very old school Star Wars base, probably one of the oldest ones they used. The rectangular base. I do like the detail of the amount of scuffing that's been put onto it to make it look like a really worn, well-used floor. It looks really good, but it's a very bland base. Star Wars TIE fighter pilot written on the nameplate in typical Star Wars fashion, with the kind of chrome reflective or mirrored nameplate. There's not really a whole heap more to say about it. Bit boring, as I said, but like I said, I do like the scuffing on it. It looks really good, looks really natural. So here we are for the TIE fighter pilot from A New Hope, standing straight up as he comes out of the box, and starting off in my usual form, we'll take a look from bottom to top. And here we have his all pleather boots. These things are not great at all. On this boot here in particular, I can already see out of the box, I'm not sure if the camera's picking up on that, but there is some creasing in it that is basically a clear indication that it's going to start to deteriorate and come away from the material that the pleather is stuck to, if that makes sense. They are detailed, you know, in the sense that they have the buckle on them and they have this little rectangular stitching on them and the seam line running up the back, which is all nicely done. But unfortunately, I can feel like they don't feel like great quality. They don't feel great. They are definitely going to deteriorate over time. I would much prefer a solid plastic mold than this cheap plastic, or cheap pleather, should I say. On the sole, we have a flat sole on them. I'm not sure how accurate that is. And then moving up to his jumpsuit or his flight suit, it is a bit of a dust magnet, unfortunately. Because it's all black, anything all black is a bit of a dust magnet. It is accurate as far as I can tell from looking at, you know, reference pictures. Some functioning pockets at the front. Very small, very small pocket on the side here. His hand would certainly not go in there. And then moving around to the back, no pockets on the back. It is just a plain jumpsuit at the back, minus the cat hair, I must add. And I just lint rolled this guy and I still have cat hair and dust all over him. And then we have his pleather belt, unfortunately pleather, and his plastic buckle on the front. And the buckle on the front does look very plastic. It does look like a cheap plastic buckle on the front. It's not great, doesn't have any scuffing on it. One stud on the side, which makes sense as to where the belt would be buckled up. So yeah, just unfortunate that it's pleather, and again it's going to deteriorate. And then we have a non-functioning pocket on the side. We have the detail of these buttons on the left arm. And it's not something I'd really picked up on until I, started looking at reference pictures. And then we have the pocket at the top of this arm here that is pleated. It is one big pocket. You could put a few things in there. Could you put his blaster in there? I'm not sure. No, that's not very convincing at all. That looks silly. Yeah, functioning pocket there anyway. And then we have the Imperial logo on the shoulders, which it has a relief on it. It kind of reminds me of the shield logo that's on the Black Widow, the Artisan Black Widow. It's something that, it has a bit of relief on it. It's not just a sticker stuck on, if that makes sense. And then on the front we have the plate that's fixed to the armor. I don't know what is it the breathing apparatus, switches and buttons on it. These switches here, the grey and the white, kind of remind me of a New Hope Darth Vader. Some cogs at the side, blue, white and grey buttons and the red buttons. It is quite a chunky piece. And then we have these silver trimmings here and this very defined straight line of white on it. And then we have the hoses. The hoses are made of a harder plastic than I would have liked, to be honest. They're not solid hard. They do bend a little bit and they allow for a little bit of articulation. As you can see there, you can get a little bit of articulation out of them if you so choose. But I would have liked those hoses to be a little bit more pliable, I suppose. They don't entirely restrict the movement, but they restrict it a little bit. But you can get generally the poses you're looking for out of them. As you can see there, if you want this head turned a little bit, you can get it turned a little bit. It's not going to turn really far, but it's going to turn enough to get some decent poses out, and it is posable. And then behind that we have the black armor plating that goes over the jumpsuit, and the details of how it's buckled up on the shoulders. Nice little bit of detail there. And then on the back we have the removable piece that I haven't actually removed yet. I haven't done this yet. This is my first time doing it, so I'm actually struggling to do it. I'm not sure what I'm doing wrong here. Is it just that it's really, really stiff? I wouldn't imagine it to be that stiff because it's just a couple of little pins that hold it in place, but I can't get that out without risking breaking something. That is not coming out for me at all there. That's a little bit disappointing. I'm gonna have to do that off camera just to figure out how it works. I don't really want to waste your time struggling. I'm getting a little bit of a gap in it, but for some reason I can't seem to get it to pop out. And as I said, I don't really want to be wasting your time here, so let's move on to the next segment. Actually, what I'll do is I'll cut here and I'll figure this out. So here we have it off. I did manage to get it off. There's Velcro underneath it there, so that's holding all the armor in place, I suppose. And you can see why I couldn't get it off is because I was pushing my finger too far up. And, I was pushing I wasn't pushing the gap, I was pushing the armor out, basically. As you can see, there's just a little gap there for you to pop your finger in and push it out. So you do have to be careful that you don't make the mistake that I made and push your finger too far up. So there we have it clipped in there. Ideally these should be magnetic, but Hot Toys skipped out, and this one doesn't seem to want to sit as flush as the other one. Maybe I have it all wrong. Doesn't seem to want to sit as flush. Again, just a bit of futs and I'll be able to get that in and get it, more flush. I just don't want to break anything, but I prefer this more detailed than the plain one. I do prefer this old school Stormtrooper-esque, detailing on the back, so I will be leaving that on. Moving on, let's have a look at this helmet. I was going to say head sculpt, but helmet. So here we are for the TIE Fighter pilot helmet sculpt. Before I move on, there's a lot of talk online about the helmet being too big and him looking like a bobblehead. I tend to disagree with it in hand. I think it's accurate in the sense that it is a helmet that goes over a head, obviously. It's going to look bigger on him. It's going to look like a bobblehead. If you imagine that there's a head sculpt in there, and then the helmet gone over it, it's it's going to look like a bobblehead. It's going to make his head look bigger than, our proportion, should I say, to his body, because there is supposed to be a head in theory underneath that helmet. So personally, I don't see the issue with the proportions. To be quite frank, I think they look pretty decent. I don't have the sideshow one to compare it to, but as far as I'm concerned, that looks absolutely on point to me. Here we are for the details of the sculpt. Very, very reminiscent of a Stormtrooper helmet, with this panel here and the cylindrical shape coming around the sides with the nose piece. Very, very much so is a reuse of a Stormtrooper helmet, which has been kind of, changed a little bit. You can see the details there where the hoses come into these parts here, and as I said, this little slit here, just like a Stormtrooper. The eyepiece is not translucent. It is a very, very dark black, but it's not translucent. You can't see through it. The details at the side and the ears of the little, what I would call a microphone at the ears for hearing, obviously. And as much as it isn't a separate panel, it kind of, you can tell that it should be a separate panel that is stuck onto the side of the helmet. And the details at the back, not a whole heap of detail at the back. You can see how shiny and glossy the helmet is. Oh, looks really Imperial and really kept really well. No weathering on it whatsoever. And then we have, of course, the Imperial logo or insignia on either side of the helmet. Decals obviously stuck on it, with this kind of a mohawk piece running down the center of it. But overall, I think the details are all there. I think it looks really, really good. And I'm not sure if the camera is going to pick up on this. Maybe if I zoom in a little bit, something that I've just noticed, you can actually see the zip for the jumpsuit. Again, I'm not sure if the camera's picking up on it, but you can see the zip for the jumpsuit just peering out at the top of the armor as well there. So to me, it all looks on point. It looks great. I actually have two of these on ordered. I have another one on the way. No head sculpt to get into too much detail, of course. It is a helmet sculpt, but I really like it. I think it looks great, and I'm completely satisfied with it. So that's pretty much it for the New Hope TIE Fighter pilot. If you made it this far, thank you very much for sticking around and watching the whole video. Not the longest video I've ever made, but not the most detailed figure I have either. So please don't hesitate to hit that like and subscribe button if you haven't already. It really helps a small channel out like mine. And I suppose I'll call it a day, and thanks for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one.